Welcome to the Northumberland Festival of the Arts. My name is Shane Joseph, and in this series of profiles, we feature interviews and discussions with individual artists, leaders of arts groups and organizations, civic leaders, and arts lovers in our county. Today, we have the privilege of talking to Ronald Mackay. Ronald Mackay, Ron as I call him, in addition to engaging in development projects designed to enhance food security in many countries, has taught at universities in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. He has published 3 memoirs in English, 1 in Spanish, and many short stories in anthologies. He also writes plays for community theater. So welcome, Ron.
Hi, Shane. It's good to be with you.
Great. So Ron, I have a few questions for you. Let's begin by saying, what does art mean for you?
Well, my writing tends to be based on what I call unresolved significance. And I mean by that significant but puzzling events or memories that haunt me. These can be recent or they can be distant. I take a memory and I try to make sense of it in the light of who I am and what I know today. So basically, I use hindsight and empathy to resolve puzzles from the past. And since I've lived most of my life in foreign cultures and languages, I'm puzzled most of the time. I've been puzzled a lot.
What does that mean in actual practice?
Well, in practice, a puzzling memory might be simply a phrase that somebody's said. It could be a gesture, it could be an event, it could be anything. And it lurks inside me precisely because I wasn't able to grasp its full significance, its full meaning at the time. I take that fragment and I look at it from every possible angle. And I use the intellectual vantage point of who I am today. So I can draw on 8 decades of varied life experiences to help me make sense of it now. And what I end up with is the resolution of a mystery. Now, I should say I'm not looking for a predetermined conclusion. I'm content just to better understand the experience. And sometimes I even arrive at more than one possible interpretation.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, I will. I'll give you the background to it, first of all. I was born during the Second World War. We lived in my grandmother's house in a Scottish village in the country. My father, like the other men, was away fighting. I remember being puzzled all the time by everything. My father and uncles would turn up briefly in uniform from unknown places and disappear again. I remember their tuning in religiously to the BBC 6 o'clock news every single day. I remember the colourful uniforms of the British and Polish soldiers and officers. We had Polish officers billeted in our house because the Polish army had been defeated in 1939 and had withdrawn to the UK. Okay, that's the background. So here's a tiny puzzling memory, a fragment of a memory from that time. September 1945. It must have been just days after the war ended. My mother took us 3 children by train for the first time to St. Andrews to stay with a friend for a couple of days. And that evening, she took us out for a walk. On an isolated beach, we met a Polish officer in uniform. I recognized him as one of those billeted in my grandmother's house. My mother and he talked quietly, and we children played. As the sun set, Major Canik, that was his name, Major Canik drew himself to attention and raised my mother's hand to his lips. I can still see the look on both their faces. It was like their souls had engaged. Then my mother turned away from him and we walked back to the house that we were staying in. That's just one of a million puzzling fragments from my past. And why has it stayed with me? Well, simply because I wasn't able to understand it at the time, although intuitively I seemed to know that somehow it was significant. And I turned that puzzling memory recently into a short play called Anthem. The play ends with the Polish national anthem, which we heard daily as children. It's Marsz, Marsz Dąbrowski.
Okay, so what exactly do you think you captured by reflecting that memory?
Well, I think I captured the essence of what had puzzled me back on that beach. I captured what might have been going through the mind of a Polish officer as he kissed my mother's hand. I think I captured what might have been my mother's sacrifice. Now, whether I captured the exact truth or not isn't really the point. The point is that my resolution of that puzzle helped me understand a more general truth about life. Fate treats us carelessly. I learned that integrity, we've got to have integrity to draw on if we're going to claim any virtue in our lives. And I've got hundreds of these fragments stored away in my head. Some are older, some are more recent. And they come from having lived and still living in a different country from the one that I grew up in. Things are not always easy to understand, and people are even more difficult to understand.
Okay, so let's take a different track now. That's a very interesting way to approach art through memory. What has your arts experience been?
Well, I've only been writing creatively for about 9 or 10 years. And previously, I wrote academic prose as a university professor. I realized I needed new writing skills, better writing skills. So I took a 3-month course in creative writing from the Faber Writing Academy in the UK over the internet. And I've also taken some short courses in script writing and in writing fiction and in other kinds of writing. And in Port Hope, right here in Northumberland, I took Diane Taylor's workshop on writing memoir. In fact, it's thanks to Diane Taylor and her book, A Gift of Memoir, that memoir has been the genre where I've had most success.
What was your proudest moment as a creator or a supporter of the arts?
I've had several. The first ones are always the most memorable. When the Peterborough Theatre Guild here in Peterborough offered a public reading of my play Portrait Power, that was one. When the Theatre on King, also in Peterborough, produced my play One in a Million, that was another. And when Bucharest University offered to publish my first memoir written about my life behind the Iron Curtain in the late 60s. But perhaps you asked proudest, perhaps my proudest moments were different kinds of milestones. When my play, the play I mentioned, Anthem, was read at the Theatre on King, Sarah McNeely read the part of my mother. She read it with the precise accent and, more importantly, the precise emotional restraint that I observed between my mother and Major Kanik, that Polish officer. That was a very proud moment. I think I captured something important. And so did Sarah McNeely. Another was when Kate Story agreed to produce Einstein's Fridge for the last Coburg Festival of the Arts. Kate invited me to sit in on the first readings and on the rehearsals for the play. Kate, Lindsay Unterlander, who played Einstein's daughter, and Brad Breckenridge, who played Einstein, transformed my script into something far greater than what I'd written. And that made me very proud, but it also made me very humble.
Great, great moments. I mean, this is what we live for as artists, right?
We certainly do.
And what are your greatest challenges as an artist?
Well, I find that my greatest challenge is to find exactly the right wording, the right words, and craft exactly the right phrase to capture the moral essence of what I'm writing about. And usually it's something tiny. My stories tend to have a little kernel of a well-crafted expression that encapsulates the moral feeling of a story. And that's the most difficult thing I find. Alan Bennett said, the best in reading is when you come across something, a feeling, a way of looking at things that you'd thought special and particular to you. It's as if a hand has come out and taken yours. And that's precisely what I try to do. And it's precisely what I find so difficult to do.
That's a great line from Alan Bennett. I should remember that.
It is.
And just like your challenges, then what are your dreams and hopes as an artist?
Well, Shane, at this point in my life, I harbor relatively few dreams as a writer. I'm happy that my muse is still with me. I can sit down and I can write. I've learned to write, not wait for inspiration. If I need to write, I write. And I'm happy to be able to do that. And I'm also happy to participate in groups like the Spirit of the Hills Writers Group and the Theatre on King and Script Club in Peterborough.
That's great, great, Ron. One final question before we part. How can the Northumberland Festival of the Arts help you and the arts to thrive?
Well, let's talk about the arts rather than me, because I think that I'm coming towards the end of my career, as it were. But I really hope, and I know that the Northumberland Festival of the Arts can do this, I hope they will engage with schools. I hope they'll engage with schools from the very beginning, the public schools, Trinity College, because if the arts are to continue to succeed and develop in Northumberland, it's absolutely essential that young people are involved and that they also enjoy good examples and sound mentoring from their elders and more experienced artists.
That's good advice, Ron. I'm hoping the Northumberland Festival of the Arts will take that very seriously and do bring in the younger folks, because our festival, if it's going to grow and prosper in years ahead, needs that constant feed of younger participants and performers. So thank you very much, Ron, for talking to us today. And thank you, viewers, for watching us. And we hope to bring you more of these interviews from notable artists and supporters of the arts in our community in the days ahead. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
It's been a pleasure. Bye.